Can we ask Chris Burley to come to the lovely chair on the stage, ladies and gentlemen, from Truro, Nova Scotia. We were able to get our hands on some pretty good video here. This guy can move. Take a look.
Chris Burley of Truro is on a very short list of the best gymnasts this country has ever produced, and he was very good from a very young age.
What made him stand out more as a young kid was that he had a work ethic of somebody older, and where I think Chris did really well was he was talented, but not incredibly talented, and he took a really good work ethic and put it with a natural ability and just made the most of it.
Now, it may sound odd, but Whitehead remembers Chris best for something he wouldn't do as a young gymnast.
For gymnastics, you do probably an hour a day of strength and flexibility. And the younger athletes tend to cheat. And I was thinking about it, and I don't remember him cheating. I mean, everybody does a little bit from time to time, but you know, he worked hard, he put in the time. He was kind of the consistently cleanest person I'd ever seen him. But what I mean by clean in gymnastics terms is that his body lines were great all the time. He always, you know, you can hack your way through a skill, or you can make sure that you do it properly without deduction. And he was super focused all the time at making everything clean, concentrating on every landing, focusing on his toes, fingers, all that sort of stuff. So he was just a really exceptionally focused athlete on not giving away any points.
Scott Russell of CBC Sports saw that focus on display often. He covered many of Chris Burley's career-defining moments, including his clutch performance at the 1994 Commonwealth Games in Victoria.
Chris was the last man up in the competition, the men's team event, and Canada had won the 2 previous Commonwealth Games gold medals. They needed a solid performance from Chris on the floor exercise to nail it down. He was absolutely brilliant at the Victoria Memorial Arena. He nailed a 9.55, and he finally cracked a smile coming off the podium as he met his coach Dave Arnold, and it was a great moment for Canadian gymnastics. They beat the Australians by that much, and they became the gold medalists at the Commonwealth Games based on Chris's performance for the 3rd consecutive games. It was magic.
Even more magic came at the 1999 Pan American Games in Winnipeg.
My broadcast partner was Carol Angela Orchard, and she had always said to me that Chris Burley exemplified not only confidence, but also focus and determination. In particular, I remember the vault. It was absolutely spectacular. He ended up winning the bronze medal against some very tough competition, but I think it was the mark of Chris Burley as a gymnast. Yes, he was very serious about his craft, but he was also confident and focused, and that's why he was successful.
Ball, a bronze medal for Chris Burley of Canada on the ball.
Chris Burley, one of the great gymnasts in Canadian history, and our newest member of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame.
You picked good video. Nicely done. Yeah. To present the plaque to Chris, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Nova Scotia Provincial Lotteries and Casino Corporation, Mr. Bob MacKinnon. And to present the pin, the outstanding gymnastics coach with Alta Gym Club and inductee as a builder to the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame, Mr. Tak Kikuchi. Yes, indeed. The first gymnast, male or female, from Nova Scotia ever to make a Canadian national team. Amazing stuff. Your old pal Philip Whitehead said you were the most focused kid he had ever seen. What do you remember about focus and being just a little guy?
He says focus, but I think he also could probably add a few more adjectives to that. But I think I went to Canada Games when I was 9, competing against my idol at the time, which was Curtis Hibbert at 17. And so, you know, the minute I started gymnastics, I was in the very first group of boys that started in Bible Hill in Truro, Nova Scotia. So they didn't even have a men's program when I started. I trained with the girls. I trained with 200 girls when I first started my first 6 months because there was no program for boys. So I just loved it, and I loved what sport does, and I loved the community that sport creates, and that's what you're seeing tonight with all the inductees and the teams, is what the power of sport to build community, and I think that was what really attracted me to it.
You blazed a trail too out of this province. It was really rare for somebody from Nova Scotia, let alone a small town in Nova Scotia, to compete where you competed, right?
Well, TAC pointed that out when I was 14. I won the Tyro national champ. I think Tyro something. Anyway, the youngest category national championship, and he pulled me aside before the big competition and said, and I don't know, TAC, if you remember this, but you said if you're from Nova Scotia, if you want to get a 9.2, you have to do a 9.4. If you're from Ontario, you want to get a 9.2, you do a 9.2 or 9.0. So that was instilled in me from a very early age when you didn't have people around you in Nova Scotia that were doing the sport, or you didn't see the success. That was instilled in me very, very early, that in order to succeed, you have to not just meet what everybody else is doing, you have to exceed it, you have to be better. And for me, then once I made the national team, I was 15 and I was traveling, it became very clear that Canada has that same role in the sport of gymnastics on the international stage. So it's the same thing, so it served me well, except for now, I mean, Ellie Black's blazing a trail herself, but she's doing incredible things, and so I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, in terms of focus, Scott Russell said when he came off the mat, he finally cracked a smile. You were known as a pretty serious guy. Can you talk about the role that sort of disciplined approach played in your development?
That was the only smile I ever did in competition. Yeah. Well, actually, Phil could probably tell you, too. I didn't smile. It was work to me, right? I came in there with a goal and objective, and that's my mentality. You know, competition is competition, and then, you know, for me to go in and meet the objectives that I had set out, we set out very high objectives from when I was a young kid, and blazing a new trail, breaking down barriers has always been very important. But when you're there, to me, it was all work. To be a high-performance athlete in these days, it's a full-time job. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of family support, and it takes a lot of drive, and it takes a full commitment of everything that you have if you want to reach the top. And I was lucky enough to see people before me that had achieved that, and so I felt like, well, I can do that too.
For people that will never know the feeling of going last in a team competition and nailing a routine to get your team a gold medal at a Commonwealth Games, can you articulate that years later, what that was like?
No one was allowed to talk to me during the competition except my coach. And so what had happened, the Commonwealth is one of the big things for me because all the other events had finished. All the other teams had finished their final performance. There was a judging conference on the Canadian before me. I think Travis was before me, and there was a judging conference, so everybody was waiting, and there was 4 of us. So everything else was stopped, and everybody was waiting for me to go. And one of the things that I think that Phil was referring to is that I have a very strong tunnel vision, and that's what they trained in high-performance athletes from being a kid, is that you focus on what you can control, focus on what you can do. And I to this day, I don't remember hearing anything until after. That's probably when I smiled. But it was all about, you know, doing it for the team. Our whole team thought we were in 3rd place. We saw the leaderboard and we said, no, there's no hope that we're not going to make. We're going to be the first Canadian team not to win on Canadian. That was in Victoria, Canada, by the way. And it's very often you don't get a chance to compete in your own home country in front of a Canadian crowd. So for me to be able to, I just went out and said, I've got to do this. It's not like I want to do. I have to do this for the team and for the country, and you know, I was fortunate enough to do it. It was one of my proudest moments, actually.
That was a good one. Listen, you touched on this moments ago, just a sense of the chain that you started that continues today with Ellie Black.
Well, I mean, David Kikuchi, Tak's son, came after me, and I think one of the most important things, and one of the reasons why this is so important to me, is that because I always recognize as a Scotian, I live in Toronto, but I'm a Scotian, and you know, being able to see what the impact has on gymnasts, because I used to think that the young athletes didn't feel that they could achieve something because they were from Nova Scotia. They weren't in Ontario, they weren't in Quebec, or they weren't in BC or the other provinces. And to see the impact of that, about breaking that barrier and being able to say, you know, see David come and make the Olympic team, and then to see Ellie, I mean, she was on, did anybody watch this morning? She was in the vault final at the World Championships again at like 22 years old. She's amazing. And the team came fourth, and she led that team. So to me, breaking down these barriers is really important, because it's not just about me and my performance or my former performance or them. It's about inspiring a next group of kids and another level of performance from the people in Nova Scotia. We're as good as anybody else. We just need to believe that we are, right?
That's a reason to smile right there. Chris Burley, ladies and gentlemen, newest member, Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame.